good evening to one and all present, and welcome to a brand new episode of VUTV by Vijay Bhumi. This is a series that we bring to you on a weekly basis that we call Educators Speak, where we are joined by eminent educators on a weekly basis to talk about topics related to the future of education. Today, we are discussing a very important topic, which is the importance of social and emotional learning in schools. And in fact, I'm given to believe that, our guest who's joining us today, it's a topic very, very close to her heart as well. Now, before I introduce my distinguished guest on this particular episode, I would like to first talk to you about this topic that we're talking about. As we know, the world is going through a state of flux. Even before the pandemic happened, we are in the digital revolution, which people call the fourth industrial revolution, which is dominated by artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, etc. Which clearly means that a lot of the functions that we are going to be performing in the future are going to be outsourced to machines. Now, what does that mean for humans? Does that mean we'll become irrelevant tomorrow? Absolutely not. We're not going to be irrelevant. But it definitely means that we need to develop a skill set which is above and beyond what machines can do. And I think the biggest skill set would be to develop a humanistic approach to things, which is to bring great social value to what we do and to bring our emotional learning to the forefront. In fact, this has been recognized as one of the important skills or the important set of knowledge that students must acquire to be relevant in the 21st century by the World Economic Forum. So while we have all these world agencies that are talking about it, we need to understand how are we actually inculcating these values at a grassroots level. What is it that we're doing at schools? What is it that we're doing right? What is it that we must be doing? Are some of the central questions that we're going to be answering in today's session. Without further ado, let me please introduce my distinguished guest who has very kindly agreed to join me today. We are joined by Dr. Rita Chatterjee. My God, when I was seeing her CV and her resume, I just thought to myself that the amount of experience that she has, the amount of accolades that ma'am has, it's really going to be such an enriching conversation for me as well as my audience members joining me. So ma'am she is the director of the North Point Senior Secondary Boarding School at Calcutta and Birboom. Apart from that, she has had 40 years of experience in the line of teaching and academia. I mean, hats off to you, ma'am, for giving the selfless service for so many years, for transforming so many students' lives. And she has held very important positions of responsibility. She has worked with a lot of top-notch schools of the country, like APJ, now with North Point Senior Secondary School. So definitely, I'm sure that the insights that we're going to have from ma'am today are going to definitely give us a lot of food for thought that we can reflect on. Thank you very much, ma'am, once again for joining us. Very kind of you to take out the time and to be with us today. Because I know that for educators, this is a very busy time. There's so many challenges that are, they are dealing with on a daily basis. I don't think if I'm wrong when I say this, but literally you are all superheroes in disguise right now because of the amount of work that all of you are putting in.
I'm sure it's sounding very nice. All that you're saying is lovely. Thanks so much. Sometimes we need to hear that, It's nice.
Absolutely. Yes. And I strongly believe, I think, I always say this on my episodes because, we started during the pandemic. I think when we talk about our health workers being frontline workers, I say that even our educators are frontline warriors because, they have played such an important role of keeping, the younger generation engaged. In these disturbing times, in fact, I know so many households in which parents are really in awe of what schools do because especially now for the past 1 year, they've experienced it. They have sat with their children in classes. They are seeing, what teachers and what schools as institutions are doing. So really hats off to all of you for putting up such a brave front and for just transforming the way you deliver education overnight.
Yeah, but Kritika, this also tells us that our schooling must have been very, very congratulatory that has allowed the teachers' bandwagon to become the frontline warriors. I mean, the way the teachers were able to move on to the online platform, mind you, not without much training, I think deserves all the compliment that you're giving us.
Absolutely. Absolutely, ma'am. I think all, forget me. I think there's an entire population behind me who echoes the same sentiment. And we're so excited to be hearing from you today on this topic because this is so close to your heart. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with you. And let's first understand from you, the vast experience, the diverse experience that you've had as in various roles, as a teacher, as an administrator. How do you feel that we should incorporate social and emotional learning in the classroom? Because we have a lot of educators joining us today. So what is your advice that you'd give to them?
First and foremost, I think it's very important to recognize that social learning, social emotional learning is actually way more required, way more important than simply teaching mathematics as mathematics and geography as geography. I'm just referring to these two subjects just to say that it is way more important to be able to make a child competent socially, competent psychologically, competent to be able to handle diverse situations. Only then are we successful as teachers of today. So therefore, I think it's very, very important for today's teachers not to be so dependent on that subscribed or prescribed textbook. All of us, unfortunately, are still so hooked on to that textbook from which we deliver our lessons. And some of us are even scared to go beyond the textbook. But I can tell you that simple example is the teachers of today and the way they were able to jump onto the online platform and take on these classes. It shows that how equipped our teachers have made us, or how equipped our academic situations then have made us, that we were able to handle the situation, the stress of it all. And we are successful. And now for us, blended learning, for all teachers, I think across, blended learning is not an issue. And we now talk of blended learning. So therefore, I think it's important, yes, and it's good that we are discussing it in platforms like yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agree with you totally. So I definitely would like to know this because, when I interact with teachers, I'm interacting with students, you realize that teachers play such a vital role in the lives of students. Yeah. And especially in the tender age when students are in school, when they're undergoing so many changes, they're formulating their idea of right and wrong. I feel like we don't have too much conversation around this, but I'd like to know from you that how can teachers enhance the emotional development of a child?
It's most important, whatever we are teaching, it's most important to, I always say this, that actual education, actual learning happens outside the classroom. Inside the classroom, what is happening is so controlled by that book, by that syllabus, by that expectation of parents, where the parents think my child can write questions and answers. But what my child is thinking, or how my child is thinking, or how my child is being trained to think by the parents, by the teachers, by the so-called role models, by the various movies that they watch, that is so very important, and which we are all missing out on. So the real place to talk to the children so that they are able to, like we say, grab the values that they must, is outside the classroom. It is outside the canteen, perhaps. It is in the playfield, perhaps. It is in the common room. It is when they are, most at ease. That is when the child's thought process and how you would like to change it around for that child, for him or her to become a dignified person in society, to be able to live in dignity, because there are challenges and it's not easy for today's children. It's not during our times. Times have changed. So today's children, we need, as teachers, we need to train them to understand the change of environment and how they need to acclimatize themselves to that change, how they need to think to be able to move with everyone. So it's very important, that we teach our children the joy of learning instead of just making them, getting bored with algebraic equations and with geometry theorems. We have to teach them the fun behind learning. We have to teach them that, it's not a crime if you don't remember your theorem number 10. But if you're able to explain it, it's all right. It's okay. So I think we as teachers, we need to become a little more easy so that children are not threatened by the presence of the teacher. They feel at ease and they're able to discuss. And I've seen this, I have worked as you introduced me. Yes, I have worked as the administrator cum principal of the APJ school for so many years, and currently I am into North Point Senior Secondary Boarding School as their director. And in the capacity, I have done a lot of workshops with CBSE, visited a lot of schools, been in midst of children. And I have seen for children, it's very, very important to be able to talk to the teacher like a friend and be able to exchange ideas so that the teacher knows when exactly to hit out and tell the child that that perhaps is not the right way to go about things. Try it the other way around, without being forceful. If we tell the child that instead of doing it this way, try it the other way around. It always works. Believe me, it works. So therefore, your question as to, how to do it, it is to talk to the children, not in the classroom, outside. When you take them for a picnic, when you take them for an excursion, when they are more at ease is when you see them in their natural emotions. And that's when you should be able to talk to them.
I think that's very true, ma'am. I mean, we need to take these conversations outside the formal setting, because that's when they'll be more comfortable to converse with you.
Yeah.
And also, I personally feel that, taking them outside the classroom would also somewhere make, bring that feeling of equality, because in a classroom setting, there's always that hierarchy, that's the teacher and, I'm the student, and, that's how the authority flows in. But, if you were to take them outside and, have a conversation with them in a different setting, then, they are more, likely to open up, because, they think that, it's more like a conversation between equals.
Yeah. Also, sometimes what teachers can do and what many of us have been doing is change the classroom setting around, remove the teacher's table completely and change the setting around. Don't make it like the typical, as I say, jail room setting with the teacher on top and the students below, or in a line, all in rows, out to say, good morning, ma'am. Don't make it like that. Make it more casual. Make it like a friendly chat. And there, whatever work you do, the children retain it more than they would in a very formal classroom setup. So the formal classroom setup, I think, should be thrown out.
Totally agree with you. I think I'm definitely a strong advocate of that as well.
Thanks.
And I think I really like the fact that you spoke about, rekindling the joy of learning. I mean, You're absolutely right. Somewhere in the rat race, the race behind marks, it's become so much about mugging up that, students have just forgotten that, why are they even learning something in the first place? Like, there's no connect, between the subject and then. And I mean, I'm quite hopeful, hopefully with this new NEP coming in, which is like a 360 degrees attitude and a complete overall of the Indian education system. I feel like, this might be a good opportunity for us to have like more conversation around how to reignite the joy of learning.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely right. And we are very hopeful with the new education policy that, teachers will be given that confidence to be able to deal with that subject in their own way. Because I can tell you, teachers are adept at it. They simply need that encouragement and that bit of training, which can tell them that, you don't have to depend on that textbook. Get out of it.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. So because go on. Sorry.
Because, we saw during the online training classes, teachers were teaching photosynthesis, and they had the YouTube. Many of them had the YouTube, but, some of them that did not, they depended on that window garden. And generally, everybody has a little window garden. So they actually told the children that, put a seed there and see where it goes, which side it is taking. Is it going towards your grill? Is it going outside the grill? And then they explained the sun and the rays of the sun and phototropism, etc. became so easy. So, children remember those words also because, light and phototropism, you align those words and then they understand that. So that's how things have become easier. And I must say, out of this adversity came a lot of learning, a lot of understanding of how things could be done differently and done better.
Absolutely.
The kids are missing out on being together. That's, a big part of socialization,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
socialization is completely absent, and that's a big problem. But definitely, you're right. There's a lot of innovation that's happened in teaching and pedagogy techniques.
Yeah.
So that I totally agree with you. So while we're talking about educators, I want to know from you that what are the critical aspects in emotional and social learning that educators necessarily need to cover in their classroom. So if there was a checklist that we could make, what are the items they should definitely check off that, these are things they have addressed in this department?
The first thing to, I think, notice is to see whether the child is, when you meet a child for the first time, you are getting to know something about the child. And if you have been a teacher, and if you have been through the right run of it, you would like to understand the child's thought as to why is he not understanding that A is aeroplane, what's his problem or what's her problem. And then if you notice a child is not reacting, then you've got to understand the child is busy with something else. And what is that? It is the responsibility of the teacher to find out what is it the child is busy with, what is occupying his or her time. And then sometimes the teachers also need to change their technique, change their tack to be able to grab the attention of the child. That's one. Number two, if you see that the child is suddenly not responding, if a child has been responding regularly and suddenly the child doesn't respond, that's when it's the alarm bell. The teachers need to check on what is happening. Why is a child not responding? So there has to be a sustained mode of teaching that the teacher has to undertake. And if it is, sequentially planned, then we have seen that generally the effect of that sequential planning works out perfectly. And a very, very important part of this is the correct feedback that we take from all our stakeholders, not only from parents, but sometimes in the online classes, our teachers would request people like us to attend, would request grandparents to attend. So we take a feedback from all the stakeholders to know how is the child responding to what kind of stimuli. And sometimes maybe the stimuli needs to be changed. And after all, we have to understand that we are here not for ourselves. We are here for our children. So that fantastic line which says, don't teach me the way you think I will learn. Teach me the way I know I will learn. Teach me the way I can learn, and you should know how I will learn. So that individual education plan has to be drawn up, and it's easier said than done. But once it becomes a practice, believe me, the movement is smooth. It does happen. It can work out. I've seen it working out.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. And I think this is what everybody's talking about, isn't it? That personalization is key.
Yeah.
That's where we are headed in terms of, education. I think it's so important for us to, realize it's not the one size fits all approach.
It cannot be one size fits all approach. Yeah, it just cannot.
Absolutely. So now that we've spoken quite a bit about educators, I would like to know parents are also a very important stakeholder in all of this. And sometimes you see there's a lot of disconnect between what's happening in school, what's happening at home. How can, because, emotional and social learning is such a big part of the child's emotional development. How can, both these stakeholders, parents and educators, work together to achieve this common objective? Like, how can they be on the same page? How should we create communication?
We can. We will. The minute we realize that we don't have to rush to complete that syllabus. I can tell you that I have so much against that very common thing. The syllabus has to be completed. The question is out of syllabus. What do you mean? The syllabus is what you can learn, and my question paper should be able to suit what I have taught you, hence what you have learned. So therefore, you shouldn't be worried. There needs to be a lot of interaction, a huge amount of interaction, understanding. I'd say, a kind of symbiosis, a kind of growing together between the parents and the school. So therefore, that system has to develop where the school feels free to talk to the parents, and the parents must understand that it's being done in the best interest of the child. And therefore, therefore, it's very important that communication happens in such a manner that both sides know how to place it effectively. Sometimes it does happen that, teachers, human beings after all, we do lose our patience. And then our approach perhaps might not have been right. And that could upset the parent, because for the parent, his or her most cherished child. And there, if you are interfering, which the parent doesn't feel is necessary, then you've got to know how to go about it. So I think the main ball lies in the court of the teacher, of the school, and the school has to train the teacher or the counselor in a manner that they are able to approach the parent in such a manner so as to not to roughen up the sleeves. And here I want to say one thing, that most schools depend a lot on the counselor, but every teacher should become a counselor. With NEP that is coming in, every teacher should be as capable to deal with situation as counselors are. And therefore, it's very important to be trained likewise, at least to feel that way. So to be able to approach in that manner. So your question was very, very important, because there's a huge disconnect between what is happening in school and what's happening at home. And the child in school is being taught, and when the child is taught, stuff that the child has to go back home and read and remember and study. When the child goes back home, sometimes the environment is not suitable for that study. So that is when, and next day the child comes not prepared. The teacher, just instead of getting angry, should actually talk to the child and find out what's up. Why is it that the child has not been able to learn it, whereas in class the child is quite interactive? So that is where the teacher has to fall in, talk to the parents, and be able to counsel the parents that if the child is to continue the learning which the child has to for his or her growth, then the parents will have to be a little more accommodative and be able to take their difficulties at another level, perhaps.
Correct. I think that's a very good point, ma'am, that you've made, that it's important for teachers to double up also as counselors.
Yeah,
and I think this is something like you were talking about, right? Throwing light on the fact that we should have multiple workshops for our faculty. I think this is something that we also need to sort of incorporate. That, making sure that, teachers are also like given some sort of professional training in counseling, in dealing with, different age groups, because the needs are very different of each age.
Yes, because every classroom is heterogeneous. I mean, you cannot have a homogeneous classroom. I mean, you cannot have two children at home who are alike, so leave alone 40 or 30 in a class. So therefore, yes, we're all heterogeneous, and the teachers need to understand that they are very, very important for all those 40, and they're as important for the first child to the last child who perhaps doesn't do very good grades. And therefore, that teacher has to be that much more resourceful to all the children. And one thing that you said about training, yes, you do need to train your teachers, but it's very important to check on how much has been used of that training. Because yes, I have seen we do a lot of training to a lot of us, but most of our training papers, they go into a shelf and they remain in that file, it's hardly pulled out. So
Right.
again, when we train, we must remember that we should train in a manner which becomes experiential. Just as we are doing experiential learning with our children in the classroom, similarly, when we train our teachers, our training sessions must be experiential and not paper pencil writing, because it doesn't help.
Correct. No,
I've seen it.
That's absolutely right. The training, obviously, I think I agree. It has to be more of experiential learning. And along with that, I think another very important component that you're talking about is just that, just we have delivered a workshop, they have attended it, that's not the end of it. It's also about constantly reviewing that how well are we sort of, bringing it into the classroom, and not making it, I think even at the workplace, not making it competitive, but rather, making it more of a collaborative exercise. That, like, for example, if teacher A is able to do it in a better manner, then probably we can have a conversation and understand how teacher A is doing it better.
Correct.
And even teacher B can use similar techniques.
Correct. Yeah. So there should be, just as when we are doing experiential learning with our children, the idea is to ensure that they are working together. Similarly, for teachers also, it's important that the team feeling develops. and that they realize as a team they need to work for the children. So, the class teacher and the subject teachers and the art teacher, the physical education teacher, the computer teacher, they are all equally important. Gone are those days when the maths teacher was the most sought after lady or gentleman. Gone are those days.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you, Kritika, unfortunately, those days have not gone. It's still the maths teacher who's the most important person sought after. But the life skill teacher is not yet the most important person. But the life skill teacher is the most valued teacher after the children have left the school.
Yeah. After school's over, then everybody realizes the importance
of that particular teacher. Yes, absolutely. Of that particular teacher. So therefore, the education system, that has to change around. Until that question paper changes, it's difficult for things to change. That question paper, 1 year will have to change. For 1 year, they will have to take that hit, that it's a different kind of question paper. Then the others will follow. Because experiential learning has come in a big way. All schools, all of us are doing as much as we can with experiential learning. But are the question papers going to be so?
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. The narrative has to change. Until the narrative and the focus points don't change, then then all for I think for perpetuity it would be like this. So either the life skills teacher during school years will be irrelevant, and suddenly after school will get over. You realize that's the MVP of school.
Yeah. There's a beautiful program that is called the Awakened Citizen Program run by Ramakrishna Mission, and what they are doing over there, and the NCERT is also done. They've got this life skill book. So it's fantastic that life skill book, every teacher can take it up and read it. And when you have the most precious maths teacher, geography teacher absent, or the history teacher absent, you can have the teacher taking up a life skill lesson. But I can tell you the life skill book in the library it remains the most new book. It's hardly opened. Yep. People don't look at it. Yeah. But that is what is most needed.
Correct.
Today's children need that kind of, and we have seen, when in the employment sector, what are people looking at? They're looking at a person who is able to deal with social upheavals, emotional upheavals, who is able to deal with difficulties and take a smooth flow.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of person. Yeah, that's the kind of person you're looking at. But if schools don't begin that training, then it's difficult for those kind of persons to come around.
Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, it's life, like this unfortunate pandemic that has made us all realize the importance of the teachers today, that they can do it online. So life is a big teacher. We have to wait to see what it teaches.
Yeah, totally. I think that's wonderfully put, ma'am. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think, just this pandemic, what has it taught us? You have to deal with so much uncertainty, stress, pressure. People are losing their job day in and day out. I mean, if you don't know how to deal with difficult circumstances, a situation like this would be very difficult to navigate through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And we see, in fact, so many people are having breakdowns. And the reason why they're having that is because, obviously, the situation is difficult, but also, I think we have failed as a society to, be able to create individuals, to inculcate those, to make that attitude, such that it's a never die attitude and you can still be positive, because people are becoming so negative these days.
Correct. For example, the sudden unfortunate turn of events where the class 10 examination is called off.
Right.
Yeah. Class 12 exam is postponed. Hopefully we'll have it. But it's unfortunate. Now, think of years to go when people will employ. And, when you look at a 2021 mark sheet, you're going to say, oh, okay, so you got your marks from school.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we are all in this race. So how many schools are going to mark the children as per their capabilities, competencies? Competencies is not being judged now. It will be perhaps judged when there are more programs like Kritika's coming up. But competency is not yet being judged. It's still the capabilities.
Correct. No, absolutely. I totally agree with you, ma'am. I think, I think there's no better time than right now to have this conversation and to talk about these things. And I'm really...
And to retain it, Kritika. Hopefully we retain it. And to retain it. Yeah. I loved I loved when I was reading about the liberal arts university. I loved it. I loved the combination that Vijay Bhumi was talking about. It was very nice. Very, very nice. Thank you so much. I
No,
wish I wish I was young to get into that university.
well, ma'am, it's never too late. Maybe you cannot study at it, but we'd love to have educators like you with us because, like I said, the problem is that, these concepts are so new age that it is going to take some amount of sensitization for people to be able to see the merit in it.
Yeah.
And, people like you are so far-sighted and can see the merit in it. We need more people like that who can actually be brand ambassadors because what is happening at our university.
Sorry, Kritika, but
Yes,
it's so important. It's so important, when a child in class 3 is drawing that typical village scene and draws a sun and then does the shadows and the shadows are incorrect. So it is, like here comes the combination of studies where the physics teacher walks into the class and tries to explain the shadow. Geography teacher walks in and tries to explain how the shadow might work. And the fact that you are allowing that combination is very nice. Very, very nice. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. That's our endeavor. And it's been such a wonderful conversation that I've had with you today. And I'm sure my audience members also agree with me because that's what the polls reflect that we just ran during the episode, that they thoroughly enjoyed the session. And they are taking back a lot of thought. And that's the idea. That's what we try to do with VUTV, create a platform where we can create that access with eminent educators like yourself and, audience members, which comprise of parents and other educators, and actually have a conversation on these topics, which we do not converse about as we should.
Kritika, I don't know whether we have some more time, but, something like counseling, it's very important for colleges, for schools, to counsel the children on career counseling, on what kind of career, what is the aptitude of the child, what is the attitude of the child, whether the attitude suits the kind of career the child is going in for. It is also very important. And then, of course, you have the economic situation of the society, you have the job atmospheres. So these are things that, yes, our children need a lot of, that psychological strength from parents, from teachers, from schools to say, yes, you can do it. Yes, you can. So that career counseling bit is also very, very important. Yeah.
Totally agree with you, ma'am. And in fact, you'll be very happy to know at VU, we actually run a School Connect program. So since our entire university is based on the concept of self-discovery, we have developed something called the Self-Discovery Workshop, where we get students to write an online test to map out their personalities, to their interests and passions. On the basis of that, we have a personalized counseling session, which is led by our registrar, Dr. Navneet Sharma, where he actually counsels the students, helps them understand the report better, and tells them that, knowing the kind of person that they are, understanding their dreams and aspirations, what are the career, pathways that they should kind of opt for. So we actually agree with you, and that's why we're trying to find more and more avenues like this, which really require some work, and trying to do our bit, as a university, as an education institution, where we can sort of bridge the gap between schools and higher education institutions, because we notice that they also kind of work in silos. We do not have them working in tandem together, and it should be like that. We should be working in tandem together, because a student graduates and comes to university, so it should not seem like a whole new alien world to the student.
Absolutely, but it is, unfortunately, till now it is. Most unfortunately, yeah.
Yes, ma'am, and hopefully now with the baby steps that we are taking, we'll be able to bridge the gap. But really, it's been such a wonderful conversation. I would love to thank you again for taking out the time and joining us this evening. There's so much that I've personally learned from the insights that you have shared, and I'm sure that is true for also my audience members. So thank you very much. I would like to thank you
for having me here. I enjoyed myself too. It was nice. And today is Poila Boishak for us Bengalis. It's the beginning of a new year. So Shubha Navabarsha to you, and hope we have a great year ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Wishing you the same. And thank you so much to all our audience members for joining us. It is the fact that you join us on a weekly basis that motivates us to bring you new content every week. We'll be back again on next Thursday with another eminent educator to discuss another topic related to education and the future of the youth. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
It was happy to have you with us.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye, ma'am.